Too many tanks on the ground. Too many tanks. Too many tanks on the ground.
Y'all ain't war machine.
Too many tanks. Too many.
I can tell that you wanna see me losing control at the same time losing my soul. Trying to move on the low, but you still can't escape from the view on the scope. If you move, you will go. When the tank's on the ground, better move out the road. Gotta flow like a hookah lounge, who won't smoke? If you choose to provoke, I might loosen the rope enough not to leave a bruise on your throat. The movement's strong, strong enough to make a bunch of grown men spray hatred like cologne. We got too much out here going on in the path you traveling, Rocky Sylvester Stallone. But you and I leave it alone. Michael B. Jordan trying to get a creed of your own. Just leave me alone. How you gonna talk like a boss? You don't even own the keys to your home. You don't wanna see me in the zone. Blood of a king in my veins, I belong on the throne with a queen of my own. Infatuated by the muscle tone of my body, love squeezing my arm. If we in the war with the other side, why you not taking shots at the other guy? Let me summarize, you advertise black on black crime and antagonize. When I analyze it with my higher mind, I miss my Virgo nature with the fire sign. I can see it clearly through my third eye, point of view higher than the birds fly. No code of honor like the summer ride, they just target practice for me bullseye. You a clout chaser working full time and your paradigm is a narrow mind. All the angels in heaven listen when I'm sharing mine. I'm giving back to the culture, I'm in the back of the Rover. Why you at home with your back on the sofa? I'm having a moment, your childish behavior, I'm sorry, I cannot condone it. The double-edged sword that I'm swinging, sharp enough to cut your bones through your garment. Yeah, Rock Nation signed a deal with the NFL recently, that's a bonus. And I just wanna know what percentage you getting paid off for your performance. Hold up, Jay-Z, he don't even know you. Nope. Trademark name who belong to. 6-figure check, no consul. Come to a point where you can't undo what you misconstrue. Every day you attack Jesus, animated like Black Jesus. For that reason, he's still undefeated like Gorilla Hebrew from last season. The war machine running circles around our competition like track season. It's hard for you to be a stand-up guy, cause in the spirit world, your back leaning. I'm sick with it, got me throwing up. PowerPoint ready, they ain't showing up. No information, just inflammation. Amazon book sales going up. But I wouldn't buy it, even if I was on a diet and had a little money on the side. I wouldn't try it, even if my life was on the line and they pointing at my body with the 9. Why should I tell them a whole bunch of lies just for them to join my side? El Shaddai, all praise to the Most High. If the Spirit walking with me, I'm fine. You cannot make a decision. I can see that you afraid of the system. I can tell you have no faith in your vision. You rather sit back and hate on religion. I bet you won't walk in the government building and tell them that you want an interview. Tell them that your name is Nimrod and you demand justice and call them a criminal. Burn up their literature right there in front of them. I guarantee you gon' make the news. At least you be finally famous. Look at the camera like, Mama, I made it. Have you ever stood in front of the very personification of hatred? I have on many occasions. The devil got multiple faces. Look at the swing of the pendulum. Look at the shape of the pentagon. I walk in the power of Pentecost. I show up and mess with your pentagram. Tanks on the ground, man.
Too many tanks on the ground. Too many.
The work that he's done. Man, we want to get into a few things, man. I want to get right into it. Wait for a few people to come on in here, bro. Let's get here and talk about some things, man. We're going to deal with some information today, family. I don't know, it's been a while since we've been live on this channel, but we're going to get into it. Bro, come on in, come on in. We're gonna get this thing moving. Definitely gonna get this thing moving. Family, come on in. Get this thing going. Come on in, family, come on in. Bring out some information today. deal with some falsehoods. I'm just gonna get it in. Get this thing started. Picked up. Let me share my screen. Let me get right to it. Share my screen here. Here we go. Let's deal with it, man. Make this a little bit bigger. All right. And this is just our disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-for-profit educational or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. So we're going to be getting into some things today, family. And as y'all can see, the title here, y'all can see the title here. It says Garfield reads epic fail on Daniel chapter 5. Right? And so as I was watching Sonetta, shout out to Sonetta TV, shout out to Sonetta, PC family. As I was listening to Garfield, I had some exchanges with Garfield on social media, on Facebook, for the better half of last week, talking about the existence of Abraham, proving the 12 tribes, and different things like that, arguments he was failing miserably on. And I'm going to show y'all how Garfield processes information and how he does it in a way that's completely fallible, right? He's a great parroter of information, but he's a very poor researcher. And I'm going to show you guys why today, right? Because it's either he's a poor researcher or he's a good researcher, but ignores everything that he's found or he's researched. And then he submits commentary of what he found as if it's evidence for something. And that makes him a liar. But I'm not going to call him a liar. I'm just going to say he's a poor researcher. And so we went back and forth on the topic of proving Abraham. Is there any evidence of Abraham? We came to an agreement there's no direct evidence for Abraham, but there is historical evidence, right? And so these are some of the things that we really have to get into and understand what we're talking about, right? We have to look into the material culture, right? We have to look into there's chronological evidence, I should say. Not historical, but there's chronological evidence that we have to deal with. And so when you and what he does is he hides behind, oh, this is not Garfield's research. This is not what Garfield is saying. But then you posit it as if you're making absolute statements, as if it is your research based on the fact that you draw a conclusion when none of the research or the historians that you quote, Garfield, make any absolute statements. So how do you take their research and do what they haven't been able to do with their own research? How do you make an absolute? How do you make a conclusion. You present it in the logical fallacy. This is what you do. And we're going to go through that today. And I'm going to show you why you're a poor researcher. And I'm just going to cut right to the chase. So I saw you on Sinetta TV the other day, and you tried to attack the Bible again, as you always do, right? You tried to attack Daniel chapter 5, specifically 5 and 6, specifically talking about Daniel's prophecy, right? And Darius the Mede, and Belteshazzar, and Cyrus the Great, and that how Daniel in the Bible got it wrong. That was your statement. I'm going to show some of that. That was your statement. The Bible got it wrong. It's what you said in regards to the historicity of Darius the Mede and Cyrus the Great and Belteshazzar and Nabonidus, in which the prophet Jeremiah deals with, in which the prophet Ezekiel deals with, and the prophet Daniel deals with. They were all contemporaries. All of these prophets were contemporaries. Ezekiel was a priest, but because of their captivity in Babylon, he was not able to hold a priestly office. This is why people often misunderstand parts of Ezekiel, right? When Ezekiel is talking about priestly things, but then he understands he's not able to do a lot of the priestly things because he's in captivity. So they would not allow him to do it. And that's another thing people often get wrong. Well, we can't do any of these priestly things, or we can't do anything because we're not in our land. No, they would not allow him to do it. Y'all have to get that right. They would not allow him to hold an office of priest. Right? So I want to get into this research really quick, but I want to deal with Garfield's epic fail in Daniel chapter 5. Appreciate you, family. I see y'all. Let me deal with this really quickly. Let's go to here. I think I'm able to see it. And so this is Garfield. This is Garfield on Sinetta a few days ago. And I just want to play a little bit again. This is for criticism and teaching purposes only. So I'm invoking the Fair Use Clause of 1976. So let's see. Let's see if I got it right here. Oh, let me do something real quick. Shout out to you, General Yashar. Let me do something real quick, because I want everybody to hear this and see this. I'll put the link in the chat for you too. Only my brothers. Let's go back to this because I want everybody to hear this.
Jesus quoted Second Ezra. So we got to be careful with that because it's a very good argument. Second Ezra has evidence that it's talking about the development of the 24 books in the Tanakh. Not Garfield.
Let's see.
To the book of Daniel and all that stuff. So let's start off right here.
Yeah, let's do it right here. Here we go, family.
Jeremiah, Judah, Black Jesus minister, and of course, the infamous apostle. Let's start. Daniel 5 verses 30 and 31. In that night,
fair use,
Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain, And Darius the Median took the kingdom being about 62 years old. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very important scripture for you to think about. All right? Now, let's take a look at this carefully right now. Darius the Mede. Who is Darius the Mede? And it all boils down to a prophecy, and it shall come to pass when 70 years are accomplished, that I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation, saith the Lord, for their iniquity and the land of the Chaldeans.
Now remember, why he's going to Jeremiah is because Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel the prophet are contemporaries. In other words, they're living at the exact same time during the Babylonian captivity of the nation of Israel, especially, I would say, the Judean kings, right? The Judean kings, right? The northern tribes had been scattered, right? The northern tribes have been scattered. So we're really dealing specifically with the Judean kings at this time. And so these people are now in captivity to the Babylonians, right? And so this is where we are. So this is why in Jeremiah 25, verse 12, it says, and it shall come to pass when 70 years are accomplished, that I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation, saith the Lord, for their iniquity in the land of the Chaldeans, and will make it perpetual desolation, right? So let's continue and let's see what some scholars, right, of biblical critics say in regards to this prophecy of Jeremiah versus what Ezekiel and Daniel does, right? And I'm going to show you the mistake that they often make, especially Garfield, especially when they don't do research. We're going to go right to what he says. I'm not going to prolong this. I want to get this out of the way, right? I often talk, sometimes I often talk to Chris Harrison. Sometimes he and I laugh about certain things because he sort of knows my style and degree, right? He knows I'll let you run, I'll let you talk, I'll let you feel like you win, and then I'll drop what he calls one of those Yarah landmines on you. But I'm going to take his advice, and I'm not going to hold it to the end. I'm going to put this hand grenade in your lap right now, right at the beginning, right up front. Put this hand grenade. And I'm going to tell y'all why Garfield is a very poor researcher when it comes to biblical criticism, because either he doesn't know how, he doesn't have a methodology, he doesn't know how to interpret scripture, or he's just a downright liar. And I really don't care which one you take, but I'm going to show and prove today why he should never, ever, ever even be engaged in these types of conversations as if he's a high-level biblical scholar. He's not even amateur with the mistakes that he made here. And he made a number of them in this video. And I'm going to say this to you, Garfield. Every debate that you announce from now on that has to do with any biblical criticism, I'm going to destroy your argument. I don't care who you're debating, when you're debating them. I'm going to do everything I can to put as much information out there to show where you fail over and over and over again. You talked about a debate you had coming up with Guerrilla Hebrew about the 12 tribes, and you went to the Song of Deborah. And you talked about the tribe of Gad and the tribes that weren't there or didn't exist. I'm going to blast you. I see my general here.
Shalom, Elder.
Shalom. Peace to you, General Char.
I'm gonna stay on mute until I get back to the house. I should be back to the house in about 15 minutes.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Absolutely. Appreciate you coming on out. But let's get back to this. And as I was saying, because his research, his biblical criticism is so horrible. I talked to him for over a week on social media last week. And the way that, and I'm going to show you how it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I can see why Captain Tazariak refuses to debate him. It's so bad. It's so bad that I don't even know why he even attempts to go up in front of people, especially on a platform like Sonetta's. I don't care what he does on his own, but he's going to go on another platform and present this faulty information as if he knows what he's talking about. And then on top of that, hold on one second. And then on top of that, let me get you right here. And then on top of that, he has the nerve to say that no Israelite or no Hebrew or whatever can contend with his information. It's ridiculous. You're not a scholar. You have so many scholars come through on your personal channel and you learn nothing from them. Garfield, you learn absolutely nothing from them. So let's get into it. Enough of that, because I don't want you to say I'm ad hominem. So let's get into it. Let's continue to play this. This is from Sonetta TV the other day. Subscribe to Sonetta TV if you have not done so. Subscribe to Garfield Reed as well, so you can hear the folly that comes across the channel oftentimes. But fair use. Let's continue this. This is from Sonetta TV, Garfield Reed.
And will make it perpetual desolation. So, okay, Darius the Mede. All right. So your ruling that is very strange, because we have the Persian Kings list, and if you want to see it, go to livius.org and just punch in Persian Kings list, and you'll get the primary sources. You have the primary documents of the king also on that website. All right. So Cyrus is the first king. Cambyses is the second, which is his son. Smerdis ruled for less than a year, like 6 months. Then the first person called Darius the First, the Great, which because Darius is actually a title. Then we move down from Darius to Xerxes, right? And pay attention, because Xerxes is Darius's son, but in the Bible, Darius is Xerxes' son, which is crazy in Daniel 9. We find another Darius, a second Darius. It's a title, Darius. And then we find the third and final Darius. I think he's the last guy that ruled the Persian kingdom. All right? So
now watch this, family. Now he's correct in the fact that when he talks about, and I agree with him when he says that the title Darius or the name Darius that we see, it's a title, right? It's a designation, right, for a ruler, right, during the Babylonian period, right? So during the time that Cyrus was great as ruling, and those before him, right, were known as Darius. They took on the various form of a Darius, right? So watch this. Now listen to what he says, because he's going to attempt to say that Daniel's prophecy is wrong because he asked the question, who is Belshazzar's father, Nebuchadnezzar or Nabonidus? And this is where Garfield epically fails, and why he should never be considered as a biblical researcher, critic, or scholar, or amateur scholar in any degree. Because if you have integrity in dealing with the information with what you know, you don't make absolute statements with evidence you don't have. That makes you a liar. That makes you intellectually dishonest, Garfield. Intellectually dishonest. and I'm going to show you where you're wrong. And this is simple stuff. But you go on the platforms and you speak as if you know what you're talking about, as if you've done some great research. And then I noticed that in your presentations, right, you pick and choose where you get your sources from. Go through all of my debates for the past at least 4 or 5 years that I've presented from other platforms. You're going to see my sources. Whether you agree with them or not, I'm going to give you source information. Right? So you make these blanket statements. You give no sources from where you're drawing these conclusions from. And all you're doing is displaying commentary as if this is evidence. That's poor scholarship. Poor scholarship, horrible research, and it makes you dishonest. Intellectually. It just absolutely does. Let's continue with what he's saying.
So now we know what the kings look like. So now if Cyrus is the first king here, how did Darius the Mede get to be the one in the Bible? Because the Bible is the word of God, and that's what a Christian or an Israelite is going to go with. They're like F history.
Now, listen to what he just said. He said that is what a Christian or an Israelite goes with, right? That we say forget history, right? Y'all hear the crap there? Forget history, because he wants to take history, right, and says, look, the Bible completely contradicts it. Well, how do you know that the Bible completely contradicts history, especially when it comes to Daniel chapter 5 and the prophecy, when you don't understand the biblical text? How are you contrasting and comparing the two? It's clear you haven't done the research, and I'm going to show it to you today. You see how he sets that? He sets that frame. No Christian, no Israelite accepts history. Because if they accept history, they wouldn't hold on to the biblical narrative or the biblical text, as if the biblical text is non-historical. See, this is what he's postulating, right? When we know that the people that are mentioned here are historical figures. No one even argues that. Right? So watch what he tries to do. He tries to say that Daniel got the prophecy wrong because he allegedly misidentified one of these historical figures in his prophecy in Daniel 5 and 6. This is what he tries to postulate. But he does this very poorly because he doesn't research. He doesn't research. This right here, what he's about to attempt to do, is trying to do, this is trash. This is trash. And I'm not even asking him to challenge me on it, because it's not even a question of not whether it's trash. It's hot garbage. Let's get into it. Listen to what he says.
And archaeology. We're going to go by what our Bible says. All right? Now pay attention now. Who is Belshazzar's father? Nebuchadnezzar or Nabonidus? And the reason why this is important, because in Daniel 2, 11, 13, 18, and 22, it does imply that Belshazzar is Nebuchadnezzar's son. All right? However, according to an inscription found in the city of it's called the Nabonidus cylinder. As for me, Nabonidus, king of Babylon, Save me from sinning against your great Godhead, and grant me as a present a lifelong of days. And as for Belshazzar, the eldest son, my offspring, instill reverence for your great Godhead in his heart. Belshazzar is the son of Nabonidus. From the verse account of Nabonidus, we find when the third year was about to begin, he entrusted the army to his oldest son, his firstborn. The troops in the country he ordered under his command. He let everything go and trusted kingship to him. So we have a problem. The problem is that has to be solved before I get off the air. Why does the Bible say Nebuchadnezzar is Belshazzar's father and not Nabonidus? If you look at the word Nabonidus, family, and you look at Nebuchadnezzar, and you remove the vowels, because remember, Hebrew don't have vowels, you would have NBNDS, NBCHNZZR. It's possible that the person who is rewriting may have mistakenly put Nabonidus' name or Nebuchadnezzar instead of Nabonidus.
Now here, this is where now he attempts to say that throughout the various times in the biblical translations, right, that the copyist, right, or one of the translators misinterpreted or mistranslated Nebuchadnezzar for Nabonidus, right? And I'm not going to even get off into the ridiculousness of saying, listen, the Hebrew doesn't have vowels. Well, it does. It does. It does. Right? But that's a whole nother conversation. I'm not going to get stuck on that. But what he says is that Nebuchadnezzar and Nabonidus, there's a copyist error here. And so then he's going to go on to try to postulate to say that the Bible has a gross error in it, right? Because there's this possible mistranslation here, right? That the Bible has a gross misinterpretation because it claims someone is the son of someone, and that we know historically that it isn't, right? This is what he's saying. But I'm going to show you again why his research is horrible. Horrible, right? So let's get to it, because I want him to give this absolute, right? I want him to give this absolute statement.
It's possible. I just want to put that out there, all right? Just for the record. All right. So who is Darius the Mede? Darius the Mede, according to some of the brothers in the Hebrew Israelite community, could be Cyrus II, the Christian community, actually. So Darius the Mede, to me, is somebody that's made up by the author. But I can be wrong, and you'll see before the show is over. The origin of Darius the Mede. Our author created a counterfactual history by attributing the conquest of Babylon to King Darius the Mede rather than Cyrus the Persian. This Darius is no mere vassal, vizier, or viceroy, but the absolute monarch of a completely independent media nation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to pay attention to this. Watch this carefully. We're going to use the Bible to prove the Bible is wrong. How are you going to do that, Garfield?
Yeah, how you going to do that, Garfield? How you going to do that, Garfield? This is the beginning of the epic fail. This is the beginning of the epic fail. How are you going to do that, Garfield? Shoot your shot. Let's go.
Because you're going to have to make a choice as a Bible believer. Who are you going to believe? Are you going to believe Daniel, or are you going to believe Ezra? Remember, they said that this guy freed the slaves, right? Watch this now. That very night, Belshazzar, king of the Babylonians, and by the way, to the last king of the Babylonians was Nabonidus, which I'm going to prove with the primary sources, was slain and Darius the Mede took over the kingdom at the age of 62. As proposed by some, could a satrap or governor of Babylon be Darius the Mede? But according to Daniel 6, it pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom. Daniel 6:6-9. O King Darius, live for.
Now, a satrap is like a governor or a high-level official that a king, especially during the Babylonian period, they would set over different provinces to help administer the king's ruling and his wishes throughout the kingdom, right? So that's what these satraps are, right? These are like local governors or mayors or different things like that that report back to the king, right? They help him officiate or govern the people. Let's continue.
Forever. The royal administrator, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce a decree that anyone who prays to any god or man during the next 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Hold up. But what about Cyrus? According to the decree, anyone praying for Cyrus would become food for the lions. Remember, the first king, according to archaeology, is Cyrus. There's no person with the title Darius until what? 522. I think Garfield is onto something here. Let's take a look some more.
Yeah, you on to an epic fail. Let's continue.
The king answered. Yeah, don't show my face on it. Just show the whole screen so that people could read it at home and freeze it. The king Darius answered, the decree stands in accordance with the laws of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed. Then the men went on as a group to the king and said to him, remember, O king, that according to the law of the Medes and Persians, no decree or edict that the king issues can be changed. Then King Darius wrote to all the peoples, nations, and men of every language throughout the land, may you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom. In this case, ladies and gentlemen, Darius the Mede is an absolute monarch, a supreme king with no overlord. But then, from where would Daniel get a Mede king conquering Babylon? Guess where he got it from? He got it from a false prophecy by Jeremiah. Jeremiah said, sharpen the arrows.
Hold on. Did you hear what he just said? He said, Daniel prophecy in chapter 5 and 6 was based on a false prophecy from Jeremiah, specifically Jeremiah 25. This is what he just said. And he got it. He said the false prophecy is because this particular king could not have existed or was not the king during the time that Daniel prophesied, or who Daniel prophesied it was, when he's talking about Darius the Mede, right? Now, remember, he said at the very beginning of this that Darius was nothing more than a title for the rulers and the kings of Babylon. Hold on a second. Let me drop the link in the chat for no down. Shalom, Sosa. Y'all welcome. I put the link in the chat. Y'all welcome to come on. Shout out to you, Prince of Yahweh. Shout out to you, KOT. You're welcome to hit the link, fam. Let's get back into it. Let me get back into it. I think I'm still sharing here. There we go. So let's start back.
Take up the shields. The Lord has stirred up the kings of the Medes, because his purpose is to destroy Babylon. The Lord will take vengeance for his temple. Note that some Christian apologists advance the idea that Darius the Mede was actually another name for Cyrus the Great, or Ugbaru or Gubaru or Cyrus, his uncle, grandfather, father, or son Cambyses. Others claimed he was Darius Hystaspes, the fourth king of the Persian Empire. Where's Sonetta? Sonetta, where you at, brother? You got to add this, share the screen. You got to share back the screen. There you go. Give me full screen, please. They don't need to see my face. All right. So
again, this is fair use. Shout out to Sonetta TV. This is for criticism, teaching, and scholarship purposes. Fair use. Shout out to Sonetta TV. Again, go subscribe to his channel. Go subscribe to Garfield Reed. Listen to more of his foolishness if you choose. But definitely, let's get it. Let's continue. Right? He's already burning fast. Right?
Make right. Remember, Jeremiah 51:11. Make right the arrows, gather the shields. The Lord hath raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes. For his device is against Babylon to destroy it, because it is the vengeance of the Lord, the vengeance of his temple. Because they're saying Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the temple. So the vengeance with God is mad that he's going to allow the Medes, the kings of the Medes, to destroy it. And I will render unto Babylon, unto all the inhabitants of Chaldea, all their evil that have done in Zion in your sight, saith the Lord. Behold, I am against thee, O destroying mountain, saith the Lord, which destroys all the earth. And I will stretch out mine hand upon thee and roll thee down the rocks, and will make thee a burnt mountain. Behold, this is Isaiah now, 13 verses 17. Behold, I will stir up the Medes against them, which shall not regard silver, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it. And Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency, shall be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. And watch this, ladies and gentlemen. Look at this false prophecy. It shall never be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. Neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there, neither shall the shepherd make their fold there. All right. So let's hurry up and close this out now. Supposedly, Darius, the son of Xerxes or Ahasuerus, first conquered Babylon by force of arms at the age of 62, and then appointed 120 governors. He issued his decrees to all the nations of the land in the same royal style as emperors. Nebuchadnezzar and Cyrus, his royal edicts were irrevocable according to the laws of the Medes and Persians. Darius had the power to decree that he was the only god or man in the empire to whom petitions might be made. A foolish move to make, indeed, if he were just a governor or puppet king who owed allegiance to Cyrus and the Persian kingdom. That's what let's let it out. Darius to me.
Again, family, he's rambling through all of this information. He's reading through here, right? He's reading off these slides or whatever, right? Trying to get around to the fact that he's already made the statement that the prophecy of Jeremiah was false. Therefore, the prophecy of Daniel in chapter 5 and 6 is false. And so the Bible can't be trusted. And he's going to make that statement. And this is why I keep saying these guys who keep attempting to discredit the scripture and say, oh, it's not historical because you can't prove it because the consensus of scholars, and he's already pulled that out already. The scholars say this or the scholars say that, and I'm going to get into you as well because I'm going to take that argument away from him today. Because if you notice one thing Garfield always does is he tries to hide behind, oh, the consensus of scholars. We have to go with the consensus of scholars. Where do you read that at? Where do you get that from, Garfield? Where do you get that from? I'm going to show you guys what he's doing when he does that and why his information can't be trusted. He's a parrot. He's not a researcher. He's not researching. He's parroting information that agrees with him, that agrees with what he wants to say. He's not looking at both sides of an argument ever. This is what makes him a poor researcher. That's called being intellectually dishonest. Because his whole agenda is the Bible can't be trusted. You Israelites can't be trusted. You're brainwashing, you're poisoning the minds of our people. It's not historical. It can't be proven. According to the consensus of scholars. When he can't even show you the consensus of scholars. And I'm going to tell you something this. Just because somebody reads off 3 or 4 different scholars that agree on the subject doesn't make them a consensus. You understand? The majority or unanimous or unanimity doesn't make you consensus. It doesn't give you a consensus. Shalom, shalom, peace to you, peace to you.
Shalom, shalom, Elder Yarah. What's good? All praise to the Most High in the name of
All
Yeshua.
praise to the Most High, man. Peace, man. Glad you can join me, y'all.
No doubt.
Just going in, and I have to say, Gideon, I know you're a very well studied brother, one of the best researchers I know in our community, man. And they often try to come at you. That's because they can't deal with your information, fam.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, and so a lot of times these guys, they try to study stuff, and then when you come out with information that they've never heard of, they simply try to laugh it off as if it's ridiculous. But that tells me right away he knows more than what you know on that subject.
Right.
So they try to laugh it off and dismiss it, right?
Right.
And then you'll see him come back 3 or 4 days later after they done Google some stuff, right? To try to dismiss what you're saying, but the damage is already done. You've already cut them.
Right, right.
And you know Garfield more than anybody. Peace to you, Kofi Hill. You know Garfield better than anybody because you dealt with him quite a bit. I probably think more than almost any Israelite in the community you dealt with him, and so you know how he does his scholarship.
Right, right.
Or what he calls it, right? So
right, and you hit it right on the head when you said what he likes to do, he likes to rail off and say the consensus. But what he doesn't do, and it's almost like he's insulting his audience intelligence. He doesn't provide the sources for what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Like, for instance, with Darius the Mede. And it's funny when you listen to him and people like him make their arguments because, you just let them talk long enough, they'll hang themselves. So first of all, he says that the scriptures were written, the Tanakh, Torah, everything was written in the 7th century during the Babylonian captivity. And what he doesn't tell the people is that's not only a humanist philosophy that sprang up that date, but the reason for it and what kills his argument is because that's when a lot of those prophecies that were told by Isaiah, Jeremiah were fulfilled during that Babylonian captivity. So them having no belief in the one, in Yahweh, in the Most High, they like to say, well, they didn't know that this was going to happen prophetically, so this is when it happened. But if he's using that argument, then how come they would let something so major as Cyrus or Darius the Mede be fake? Meaning, if they was writing with 2020, why would they even put Darius the Mede in there if he's not a real character? If they did this in the Babylonian captivity, which is real fresh in the memory of the writer, if that's when it was written, according to Garfield and the people he say support him. So that kills it. But when you look at the primary accounts of who tells us about it, you have Herodotus, Xenophon, and Siestas.
Correct. And even Berosus. He's a Babylonian historian.
Right.
He goes into it as well. You're absolutely right.
Right. you know, as well as Josephus. Those are other ones as well.
Right.
And you know, the Nabonidus, you know, Cylinders, Chronicle.
Yes.
But the thing that Garfield does, and he doesn't, and it goes to insult their intelligence.
Right.
He picks one vein of information and he goes with it.
Right.
Because he takes the viewpoint from Herodotus. Herodotus doesn't mention a ruler of the Medes that was more prevalent when Babylon was conquered by the Persians. But the other main source, Xenophon, he clearly states that there is a person head of a Darius the Mede, which Garfield, like you just said, admitted himself, Darius being only a title.
Right. Exactly.
You know, it's
Yeah.
almost and it is funny because it's like, you know, a person like, you know, he doesn't have nicknames. He has his real name supposedly. But a person like Sonetta, he couldn't go to Wells Fargo trying to draw money out under the name of Sonetta. Sonetta does not exist to them.
Right.
So it's a lot of methodology that they fail to let their listening audience know that they must take into context, or they just hide it because they know it would destroy their point. Darius the Mede was not only a title, but it was a title that originated with their so-called Darius, who I say from the information is Cyaxares II. You know, everything points to that. But even with that fact taken away, he still cannot prove that a Darius did not exist.
Facts.
And that's the thing we got to understand a lot. True enough, there may be times we can't prove someone did exist,
right,
but they cannot prove that person did not exist.
Exactly. And I had a conversation, like I said, I've been having a conversation with this guy Garfield all last week about the existence of Abraham. And he keeps saying the consensus of scholars say that he doesn't exist. I said, you're lying. That's not what they say. What they're saying is there's no direct evidence for, and there's no direct evidence against.
Right.
This is what William Devers is saying. And he kept trying to bring, I said, okay, let's have a debate or a discussion on T.L. Thompson and Van Satis, who says he doesn't exist. But then Devers comes back and said, listen, we don't have any direct historical evidence that he exists, but we don't have enough evidence to say that he doesn't, because there's something that exists called chronological evidence. And when you start looking at the chronological evidence for Abraham, he very well existed.
Right.
And so what happens is, and I'm gonna let you go out, and what happens is that when these guys start talking about, well, the consensus of scholars, that's not the consensus. The consensus starts to occur in a process when you have people from multiple or interdisciplinary studies, not just archaeology, but anthropology, right? Linguistics. You have to look at all of that to make a determination on a consensus, not just one field of study, Garfield.
Exactly.
And so he looks at that and says, see, there's no archaeological evidence, so therefore the absolute meaning must mean that he did not exist. That's not how you come to a consensus.
Right. Definitely. But so, you know, as it always shows, once you dig into the information and look at the information that's available based on the primary evidence and sources and primary archaeological digs and finds, and not off of what a person who looked at all of that ate it up, and now they're regurgitating it to you. That's what Garfield, he's giving you the vomit from the vomit of somebody else.
Exactly. And I told him, he keeps saying, well, your information is outdated, right? That's another one of his arguments. Your information is outdated. Well, there's no such thing as outdated information if there's no new evidence.
Right.
That's the lie that he tells. right? Or look at this report. Well, look what they did. Just what you're presenting, what you're showing is from the 1800s or 1908 or 1947 or 1976. But then he brings you to something that's strictly commentary from 2010 through 2012 that's only commenting on the previous works from the 1800s. Right. They're not submitting any new evidence for or against.
Exactly.
So that's not outdated information, Garfield. That's new commentary on old information, on the existing information. But he poses this to the community as if he's being a scholar, as if he's being scholastic. Right? It's completely insane. And so, like, this is what we have to deal with. So I'm gonna get into some information really quick. Let me share my screen again. I'm gonna share my screen. And then I'm gonna go back because I want him to make this statement he makes.
It is actually a creative inference based on a real Darius and a real Median empire. Let's just keep it real. There were Dariuses in the Persian Empire. Whether they were Medes or not, I don't know. Maybe they were Medes. Elsewhere, the Hebrew Bible contains some prophecies that Babylon would be conquered by the Medes. So Daniel now in the future is reading Isaiah and Jeremiah and trying to correct the bad prophecies that didn't come true. Rather, in the real history, the Persians conquered Babylon twice. Once in 539 BC, when Cyrus marched into Babylon unopposed, and again in 522 BC, when Darius the Great put down a revolt and took Babylon by force. So the writer may have conflated those two stories and then tried to make the prophecy come true by making Darius the same Darius, but pushing him back to the time when Cyrus took over and made up this guy called Darius the Mede to fulfill the prophecy by Isaiah.
Now, this is where he gets completely and utterly ridiculous, right? To claim that Daniel or Jeremiah made up this character in the Bible called Darius the Mede in order to fulfill a biblical prophecy that he claims Jeremiah failed on. This is what he's saying, right? This is what he's saying, that the Bible can't be trusted, that these prophecies can't be trusted. The whole thing is trash because it can't be proven. It's all made up, right? Now, if anybody studies history, just simply study history. If you understand that oftentimes the Persians and the Medes, those two names were often transposed for one another. If you just study a bit of history. If you just study a bit of history, we even have an account where there is one such Persian who had a Persian father, and his mother was a Mede. And we're going to see that when you start getting into the history, that oftentimes that person was referred to as a Persian or a Mede, because his mother was a Mede and his father was a Persian.
Khan. And if I can, I just want to add the fact that what he said, he was saying that basically the Medes were never a superpower in that time and in that area of where the Persian and the Medes formed at. And what's interesting, when you look at archaeological facts, the Haran Stele actually called Mede the superpower in the relationship between Mede and Persia. Because the history basically goes, as you know, most of us are well aware of, that the king of Media had married his daughter off to a prince of Persia. And that prince, he was one of the not more powerful princes in Persia at that time. That's why his father is basically kind of unknown. But just one piece of archaeological evidence that destroys Garfield would be the Haran Stele.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that out, because I had that in my presentation. And this is another question. Garfield, he either doesn't know that information is out there, Gideon, or he completely ignored it. And that makes him intellectually dishonest and a liar. You understand what I'm saying about this guy? I'm gonna share my screen on that real quickly. Let me go into this presentation a little bit, because you're absolutely right. And we're gonna get out and we're gonna talk about here it is right here. Right? Let me make sure people can see it.
Yeah, it's not showing right now, but
it's not showing. Hold on. Let me share my screen on it real again. Hold on. There we go. There we go.
Okay, yeah, you good.
Yep. I'm glad you brought that out, Gideon. Perfect segue to go right into it. And this is what I mean about them not really wanting to act like they don't respect your scholarship. You see what I'm saying? Because this ain't nothing, you see what I'm saying, you just Google. You would have to know that this existed, Gideon, to even bring this out in this context, in this moment. You understand what I'm saying? And so without Garfield even presenting this information, makes him intellectually dishonest, because it kills your argument right off the bat. If you do a little bit of research, you get to this conclusion.
God.
That Jeremiah's prophecy and Daniel's prophecy is correct by this one extra biblical source.
Facts.
A historical source in archaeology, Garfield. This is why I say it's an epic fail, bro. And you do this often. You do this often. That's why your scholarship is not to be trusted. But you dare criticize Israelite intelligentsia? You dare criticize how we move with this scholarship? You say Christians and Israelites don't deal with history and archaeology? Come on, bro. Who you think you're talking to? Like, this is simple. Let's read what it says. It says the inscription recounts deeds of Nabonidus, but it's believed to have been written after the date that most scholars believe Cyrus dethroned Astyages, but before the fall of Babylon. In it, Nabonidus refers to kings who urged him to return to Babylon. He lists the kings of the land of Egypt, of the land of the city of the Medes, of the land of the Arabs, and all the kings of hostile lands were sending to me for peace and good relations. Now remember, he read off of scripture in Daniel, I think it's in Daniel chapter 6, where it talks about the land of the Arabians would be desolate, right? Or would be uninhabitable, or would be less populated, right? He read that. The Haran Nabonidus Stele confirms that. Confirms that. Let me get to let me see here. I think somebody just popped in here. Let me see who it is real quick. Let me get back to it. Let me get back to it. All right. Let me know. Can you see it again?
Yeah, you still sharing. You good.
All right, bet. Let me go back a little bit. Right? It confirms that. It says, we were sending me for peace and good relations. Anderson argues, let me go. I think I may have missed one. Right? But here's what it is. It says, Anderson, I'm going to show you who he is. Anderson argues the Haran Stele thus offers strong support for the existence of who you brought out, right? Xenophon's, right? Xerxes II, right? And Daniel's Darius the Mede. Isn't that what you brought out, Gideon?
Yeah, exactly.
The scholars agree.
Yeah.
Right? By implying that there was a king of the Medes from whom Cyrus did not overthrow.
Khan. And that's basically what the position is. Garfield is trying to say that it goes from Astyages to Cyrus, to the Babylonian ruler, not Cyrus the first.
Right.
He tries to eliminate that title of Darius the Mede. But what the evidence shows that there is a position, is Astyages, then it's that position, which is the title Darius the Mede, that evidence shows that that king existed, which was the king of the Medes after Astyages, and then he gave the crown to Cyrus. So Garfield is trying to eliminate that middle person, which, you know, the data definitely does not support it. The only thing, like I said, is Herodotus, who does not mention it. And Herodotus says he had 3 stories to pick from.
Absolutely. And we do have an account of a physician, I believe, that lived at the time, a Babylonian physician that lived at the time, a latter historian, and he clearly says Herodotus is a liar.
Yeah.
He said Herodotus lied about it. He made it up. You see what I'm saying? So these are extra biblical sources, historical sources that we're talking about here. Right? So again, let's continue. Right? So in 2014, Stephen D. Anderson, while at Dallas Theological Seminary, wrote his doctoral dissertation reevaluating any criticism against Daniel 5. This has now been published under the name Darius the Mede, a reappraisal, right? Grand Rapids, Amazon Create Space 2014. Go read it if you want to. And I understand this is a dissertation paper, but the research is there, right? So Anderson argues that the scholarly world moved far too quickly to reject the identification of Xerxes II with Darius the Mede. He appeals to much of the evidence cited above, which is what we just read, about also considers a significant piece of scriptural evidence to support that conclusion. He's talking about the Haran Nabonidus Stele, right? So this is exactly what we're saying here. But Garfield never addresses any of this. You mean to tell me you didn't see this? Your research didn't lead, your grand research skills, your superior research skills didn't lead you to the Haran Nabonidus Stele? Garfield? It's intellectually dishonest, brother. If the Haran Nabonidus Stele is correct, the critics have no grounds on which to claim that Darius the Mede did not exist. Like Belshazzar, what Daniel wrote was accurate all along. Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, of the lineage of the Medes, in Daniel chapter 9 and 1, which also he tried to bring out later, is the last king of the Medes known to the Greeks as Cyrus II, the son of Astyages. You killed him, Gideon, based on what we know.
And what's actually funny about the whole matter is that when you look at the story and the archaeological and historical evidence behind trying to identify Darius the Mede, or even just that story of the Babylonian captivity, you find that the scriptures spoke about people that weren't even discovered until modern times. It's like Darius the Mede isn't the first person in this story that was, denied. At first, they didn't, accept Belshazzar, as a lot of us know. But then later on, they found artifacts that proved that he did exist. So, that's just a perfect case of, they dig their own grave,
Absolutely. Okay. And here we go again, right? The Nabonidus Chronicles, right? Let's deal with it. Let's go to it, right? Now, he talked about this, right? he talked about the cylinder, right? But let's look at what Livus, because he used this as a source. He quoted this, right? Watch this. The Nebulitis Chronicle tells the story of the rule of Nabonidus, the last king of independent Babylonia. The text is badly damaged and contains many lucanas. However, it makes clear that the rise of Cyrus was not unexpected. We meet him for the first time in Nabonidus' 6th year, 550 BCE, when he defeats the Median leader Astagastes. A second reference can be found in year 9 when he defeats the king of that country, of a country that cannot be identified, 547 BCE. In addition, we learned that Nabonidus was not in Babylon for 10 years. Instead, he seems to have tried to subject Arabia. Isn't this what Daniel chapter 6 tells us? Right?
Yeah.
In year 3, he conquered the kingdom Edom, which controls the direct road from Babylon to the Gulf of Aqaba. Right? From year 7 until year 16, Nabonidus stayed in the oasis of Tamar in the Arab desert. It says from where he could easily go as far as south as the oasis of Yathrib or modern Medina. The events of year 17 look rather desperate. Although the New Year's festival Akitu could be celebrated, several divine guests failed to attend, which suggests that their hometowns were under siege. We also learn about a short invasions by soldiers from the sea land. Throughout this text, Akkad means Babylonia. The first years show Babylonian military activity in Syria and southeast of modern Turkey. The transmission load by made A.K. Grayson with some changes based on more recent research. This is what I'm saying. Let's go to Daniel. I want to go to Daniel chapter 6 real quick and show you but Garfield has no understanding, bro.
Yeah, it's sometimes it get laughable what he try to pull off and
yeah, man, it's ridiculous. Bro.
Try to get by with. Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's funny, bro.
It's only so much you can get by before you got to show and prove, man. You can't
before
keep
you
saying
gotta show and prove, bro.
Yeah, you just can't keep saying what everybody's saying. You know, not saying why they say it. Like, come on.
Right.
We can think for ourselves.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Right. Let me start with here. Just to give some reference, Daniel 6, verse 25. Daniel 6, verse 24. Right. It says, and the king gave the command, and they bought those men who had accused Daniel, and they cast him into the den of lions, them, their children, and their wives, and the lions overpowered them, broke all their bone in pieces before they ever came to the bottom of the den. Verse 25, then King Darius wrote to all the peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in every dominion of my kingdom we must tremble for fear below the God of Daniel, for he is living and steadfast forever. In his kingdom his one shall not be destroyed, for his dominion shall endure forever. He delivers and rescues his works and wonders in heaven on earth, who was delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. You see what I'm saying? Like the archaeological evidence agrees.
Facts.
Like, what is this guy really talking about? What is he talking about? So this is what I'm saying. The guy, man, this has to stop. Let's go to this one right here.
And Elder Yarah, I'm gonna jump off right quick, but I'm gonna be back on in a minute if you're still here.
Yep. You try to go through most of this. Right. So let's just read this. Right. This is some commentary. Belshazzar and Darius the Mede. Was Daniel wrong? Let's read it. A favorite target of critics of faith concerns two kings mentioned 8 times each in the book of Daniel, Belshazzar and Darius the Mede. The first is the Babylonian king who Daniel records was feasting with Babylon fell, Daniel chapter 5, verse 1 through 30. During whose reign he received two visions, Daniel 7 and 1, 8 and 1. The second is the Median king who took Babylon from Belshazzar, Daniel 5 and 31, through Daniel in the lion's den, Daniel 6, 1 through 28, and during whose reign Daniel also received a vision, Daniel 9 and Daniel 11, right? Here's the Cyrus cylinder, right? Here's the problem, right? It says, unfortunately, much of secular history does not record the existence of Egypt of these figures. For example, the Uric Kings list, right, which is what he tried to go to, right? He knows all the arguments against. And I'm going to show you why he's a poor researcher, right? Because he only presents the arguments against. And Akkadian tablet kings, listing kings from the Assyrian king Banapal to Seleucid king Seleucus II, this Nabonidus as the last Babylonian king and Cyrus the Great as the first Medo-Persian king. This had led some to conclude that neither of these kings mentioned in Daniel actually existed and was wrong. Well, we just showed and proved that that's not the case with the Nabonidus stele, right? Watch this, the discovery of Belshazzar. There's no question that Nabonidus is mentioned prominently in ancient texts describing the end of the Babylonian Empire. The Cyrus cylinder found in the British Museum, for example, an Akkadian clay cylinder written 539 BCE and placed in the foundation of the Babylonian temple, records Cyrus the Great's claim that he defeated Nabonidus because of his irreverence towards the god Marduk. This led some to conclude that Belshazzar and Nabonidus must have been the same person. Josephus, the first century Jewish historian, drew that conclusion in the Antiquities book 10, right? But that changed in 1854. Archaeologist J.G. Taylor found 4 Akkadian cylinders written by Nabonidus around 540 BCE, Garfield, in connection with repairs he had made to the temple of the moon god Sin in Ur of the Chaldees, right? On the cylinders, Nabonidus prayed for Belshazzar, the eldest son, my offspring, which is what Garfield quoted to try to say that Daniel got the prophecy wrong, right? But watch this, right? When speaking to Belshazzar, referring to Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel used the expression, you, his son, Belshazzar, in Daniel 5 and 22. Nabonidus and Belshazzar were not of the biological lineage of Nebuchadnezzar, but Daniel used son in a figurative sense. So why would Daniel call him Belshazzar king? Daniel 5 and 1. Watch this. An Akkadian inscription known as the verse account of Nabonidus, believed to have been written during the reign of Cyrus the Great, claims of Nabonidus. Watch this. He entrusted the army to his oldest son, his firstborn. The troops in the country he ordered under his command. He let everything go, entrusted the kingship to him, and himself he started out for a long journey. The military forces of Akkad marching with him, he turned to Timid Deep in the west. Belshazzar was entrusted with the authority of kingship in his father's absence. In other words, he was made co-regent, means that they were ruling at the same time. This is further supported by another text known as the Nabonidus Chronicle, which speaks of the prince being left in Babylon while Nabonidus was frequently away. It is believed that Babylon fell while Nabonidus was away from the city and Belshazzar, his co-regent, was in charge. This explains well why Daniel was offered to become the third ruler in the kingdom, according to Daniel chapter 5, verse 16. Belshazzar was a king, but could only offer Daniel the position as third ruler because his father was first and he was second. Today, few question the existence of Belshazzar. Daniel was accurate all along, Garfield. You can't call yourself a researcher, bro. You can't call yourself a researcher. This is basic. You won't even take the integrity enough to present both sides of an argument. But you want to say Christians and Israelites don't deal with archaeology and we don't deal with historical fact. and that Jeremiah gave a false prophecy and Daniel gave a false prophecy, so the Bible can't be trusted, the Bible got it wrong, when we clearly see every piece of evidence from that era, that time, dealing with these people confirms the prophecy of both Jeremiah and Daniel and Ezekiel. Stop coming to us with this trash, Garfield. And then you try to say, well, maybe this is not my research. This is what a consensus of scholars is saying. A consensus of scholars is not saying what you're saying. Right? Watch this. Darius the Mede, a modern problem. Unlike the question of Belshazzar, until modern times, there really wasn't much controversy of identification of Darius the Mede. Two ancient writers had spoken of a Darius that ruled before Cyrus the Great, who was distinct from Darius Hystaspes, the third king after Cyrus, and father of Xerxes. The first was Berosus, a Babylonian historian who lived in the 3rd century BCE. His works, though widely known in the ancient world, now survive only in quotes by other authors. In the Armenian translation of the Chronicle of Eusebius, he is quoted to refer to a King Darius, who held power before Cyrus the Great. From the Chaldean Chronicle, book 11. Second was a Greek grammarian named Harpocration, who lived in the 2nd century AD. In a lexicon he wrote on 10 Greek orators. He defined the meaning of the word darik, a Persian coin. He wrote, darics are not named, as most suppose, after Darius, the father of Xerxes, but after a certain other, more ancient king. Ancient king. So this goes against Garfield saying, listen, we don't have the first mention of a Darius until somewhere around 700 or 500 something BCE, whichever he said. But here we have the historian saying that that term comes from a more ancient king, even before the Dariuses that we know of. It didn't come from the Darius, the father of Xerxes, but a more ancient king, or what Garfield would like to call an eponymous ancestor, and tries to allude to people and fool the people. That means that that person never existed. But it doesn't mean that at all. Doesn't mean that at all. This is why Garfield's scholarship can't be trusted. He has to, if he doesn't say from now on that this is my hypothesis, if Garfield would just come out and say that, I would have no problems. If he would just say, this is my hypothesis, this is what I feel. But he doesn't do that. He tries to present the information as if it's what the scholars are saying as evidence to the fact. And that's not the case. He's a poor researcher. And until he honestly comes before the people and say, look, this is what I think. This is how I feel. This is my hypothesis. This is my theory. Unless he precedes every confirmation, every story now on, every bit of information now on, if he doesn't start out with that, turn him off, because he's about to lie to you. He's about to lie to you. Let me go back into something else real quick. I want to deal with something real quick, because Garfield does this often. Right? And we're dealing with Darius, Cyrus, Nabonidus, and Balthazar. The accurate prophecy of Daniel chapter 5. Right? This is what we're dealing with. This is what Garfield often does. It's called an appeal to common belief, right? Also known as appeal to accepted belief, appeal to democracy, appeal to widespread belief, appeal to the masses, appeal to belief, appeal to general belief, appeal to the majority, appeal argument by consensus. This is what Garfield always does. We have to go with the consensus of scholars. Where does that say that at? Where do you get that from? Watch this. Consensus fallacy, authority of the many, bandwagon fallacy, which is a good one for Garfield, appeal to the number, argumentum in numerum. That means your argument by numbers, right? Or argumentum, consensus genitum, or we began this by the consensus of scholars. This is where we should start our thought based on what the consensus of scholars says, right? Appeal to the mob, right? Appeal to the gallery, consensus gentium, mob appeal, social conformance, value of community. This is where that comes from. This is where we get that from with Garfield. Complete logical fallacy. Complete logical fallacy. He does this quite often, family. And we have to make sure that when we're dealing with this guy, that we understand these things. Especially, hey, look, I'm gonna keep hitting him with this bandwagon fallacy. Because that's what he does. It's a fallacious argument. And he hides behind it. Garfield, this is you exposed today. I hope every debater, every person that wants that has going to have any type of attempt at a scholastic conversation with Garfield or exchange, anybody reading his book, understand that this is what you're reading. This is what you're reading. Appeal to common belief, a bandwagon fallacy. It's not evidence. It's not evidence. Here's the description of it. When the claim that most or many people in general or of a particular group accept a belief as true is presented as evidence for the claim. That's exactly what Garfield does. In every presentation, every bit of information he puts out. Accepting another person's belief or many people's belief without demanding evidence as to why that person accepts the belief is lazy thinking and a dangerous way to accept information. And that's what I'm telling y'all, family. Listening to Garfield and how he presents his information is dangerous. It's dangerous. And it should not be trusted. Should not be trusted. Y'all got to understand when you're dealing with Garfield from now on. Anytime you go on this platform, anytime he engage you on social media or Facebook or whatever, know this is his position. He comes from a position of a logical fallacy. He's not thinking. He's not thinking. He's only hiding behind someone else's work. Not formulating his own hypothesis, but he wants to give you an absolute as if it's evidence. Let's continue. I want to deal with something else, people. This is very important. This might be one of the most important things I say on this show today. If I got good sound, family, if my sound is good, please put one in the chat for me. Please put a one in the chat for me. This might be one of the most important pieces of this presentation that I'm going to bring out. And that is scholarly consensus in biblical studies. right? Scholarly consensus in biblical studies. Does it mean anything? By Tim Whittlefield, 2012. Let's go to it. Let's go to it and see what he says. Let me see. All right, let me try to find it again. Let me go to something else. Let me go back and study it from here. That's not the one I want to go to. I'm going to pull it up because I really want to read that. Here it is. I want to read this, family. What is scholarly consensus in biblical studies, right? Let's just read it, right? By Tim Whittlefield, right? And let me read it. It might surprise some people to know that even several years after Darwin and Wallace made public their independent discoveries and insights regarding natural selection, the vast majority of Lamarckians were not persuaded. Similarly, some diehard steady-state proponents never embraced the Big Bang. Fred Hoyle was promoting variations, his steady-state theory publishing papers as late as 1993. Even in the hard sciences, it often takes a new generation to come of age before the paradigm can shift, right? Watch this. More often than you might expect, progress requires this combination: the old guard dying off and new scholars coming of age, cutting their teeth on promising new research for new ideas to take hold. And take note, I'm not talking about ideas that form the basis of our self-identity or place in the universe or our salvation. It's simply human nature to hold on to ideas that have worked well for us, especially if we held them for decades. Consider then how difficult it would be to change your mind if it meant the difference between eternal bliss and riding in the hole in the dirt until you're dust. The limited utility of scholarly consensus. Listen, family. Scholarly consensus in any field has somewhat limited usefulness. It tells us what most people think within a given field at a given time. But does it really give us an insight on fundamental universal truths? Probably not. But at least it gives us a starting point. A little over 7 years ago, Mark Goodacre at his New Testament blog asked, what is consensus? Tied up in that question, of course, are related questions pertaining to how we determine consensus. This is very important because this is what I'm going to deal with, because Garfield loves to throw this out to hide behind. This is not Garfield. This is the consensus of scholars. We're going to deal with that. We're going to deal with that. We're going to take your Linus blanket away today. It says, what does it value? Whom do we ask? And so on. By all means, if you haven't read it, you should do. And while you're at it, you should also check out the following post, less of a consensus on consensus. It's unfortunate that some of these links Dr. Goodacre refers to are no longer available. At the bottom of this post, I'll provide a list of eternal links made possible by the Internet Wayback Machine. But anyway, let's deal with this. In Dr. Michael Powell's original post, see Wayback link, he asks for probing questions. First, consensus is a very slippery notion. What is consensus? I wouldn't think it's unanimity. In other words, it's not a unanimous decision that everybody agrees. It's not a unanimous decision. It's not that. But Garfield often postulates that, and Jabari does it too. Oftentimes, the consensus of scholars, the scholars have said, or the majority of scholars, that does not give you unanimity. In other words, there's no unanimous voter decision that's been made, or a meeting of the minds has been made for you guys to make these claims when it comes to the information, right? At least not in dealing with such large and diverse groups of people. And it's certainly not simple majority. So consensus is not unanimity, it's not unanimous, and it's not the majority. So you're not even talking about the majority. That's how they try to postulate it to you when they're presenting this information to you guys. So what is it? 70%, 80%? Can 90% safely be considered consensus? What is it? Is it 49 or 51? That's not how it's determined. Second, who gets to be part of the polling sample? Why are they talking about a polling sample when you're dealing with determining a consensus of scholars? Because scholars, they have to vote. What? They have to vote. There has to be a meeting of the minds. Only those working with a particular historical or theological perspective or methodological paradigm. All those who have published scholarly monograms on the subject. All scholars who have studied the subject in depth, whether they've been published in or not, and who determines what makes a scholar or appropriate authority on the subject. Who makes that determination? Is it the first year? Is it the first year university graduate, or the one who's a PhD candidate, or the one who's just received his PhD candidacy, or is it one that has neither of those things, but he's been studying in the field for 30 or 40 years? What determines scholars? Or an appropriate authority on subject? Garfield. Third, how does one actually go about doing the polling to assess consensus? So when you're saying there's a consensus of scholars, don't say that to us anymore, Garfield, unless you can show us the poll results. Show us the voting, the meeting of the minds that has occurred and taken place where the consensus of scholars have agreed. Show us the evidence of what you're saying. Prove this consensus. Prove it. You can't do it. One can meticulously search through all relevant literature on the subject and record opinions in the table, which is sometimes done on specific issues. But this then leads to some of the questions in the previous point. And one often quickly realizes that the individual scholarly perspectives on any given issue are too complex to fit neatly into a simplistic table of scale. Finally, even if one can get past the previous questions, what does consensus prove? The consensus in 1976 on Paul's perspective on the Torah and his understanding of justification by faith was pretty strong, I would guess, until Ed Sanders provoked a Cuneian paradigm shift with his Paul and Palestine Judaism the following year. Now there is as much variegation in perspective on these issues as some of Sanders' respondents have claimed was evident in the nominalism and the soteriology of first century Judaism. Did the consensus prior to Sanders' book make that so-called Lutheran view correct? Does the lack of consensus mean that no one has any real grasp or any real on the issues? This is what I'm saying. Who determines that? Can we all agree that we agree? Right? There has to be a consensus. Watch this. And with respect to the question of who gets to vote and how do we count them, Goodacre says, talking about in order to declare a consensus of scholars, there has to be a vote on a particular subject. And not just people from one field, but across many different fields, there has to be an interdisciplinary vote or polling that occurs on a particular subject. And this is what Gooder writes about that. He says, I am not sure that consensus can be easily and necessarily equated with a majority view. A given consensus emerges over time and is something that is the result of the combined forces of monographs by experts, the introductory level textbooks, websites, the passing comments and conference papers, conversations over a beer, etc. I am not being facetious about the importance of the latter. It is the casual discussions that one begins to feel the existence of a consensus or the lack of one. Of course, there is some relationship between consensus and majority view. I cannot imagine a consensus that is not also majority view either. But consensus is about more than just a count of heads. He continues by noting that a simple majority of New Testament scholars hold to the notion of Jesus as an apocalyptic prophet, while a significant minority see him as a non-apocalyptic social religious reformer. In this case, there is no consensus on the true nature of the historical Jesus. But Garfield believes in an historical Jesus. This state of affairs can and probably will change over time, and one view may become dominant. However, at present, we have no consensus. No consensus. I want to show you guys something else. For anyone to make a claim that there's a consensus of scholars that has been had on any subject or any topic where it no longer needs to really be discussed because there's no new information being presented or there's some information that has been presented, there has to be what is called a consensus decision making. There has to be consensus decision making. And what is that? Let's deal with it. Let's see. And this is just Wikipedia because I'm only breaking down its definition. Consensus decision making in biblical studies. Does it mean anything to common belief? Right? I want to go back. I want to deal with I'm going to Google this consensus. This is decision making. Let me go back to the first one. I want to get that one because it reads better. Consistent decision making. Let's deal with it. This is the one I want to get right here. Yeah, let's just deal with this. Consensus decision making or consensus process. It's a process, people. So if anyone says, well, we have a consensus of scholars, show them the paper, show them the conference, the notes, show them everything that was taken, the research, the decision that was making during the decision-making process. If it doesn't exist, then there's no consensus of scholars has been made. If they can't show you the process when they claim something about a consensus of scholars, if they can't show you the process and what came out of that process, the meeting of the minds, then there's no consensus of scholarship that has been made. They're lying. There's a process. There's a process that takes place, right? In which participants develop and decide on proposals with the aim of requirement or acceptance by all. The focus on establishing agreement of the supermajority and avoiding unproductive opinion differentiates consensus from unanimity. which requires all participants to support a decision, right? Let's go down here. Consensus decision-making is a self-described practice originates from several nonviolent direct action groups that were active in the civil rights, peace, and women's movements, right? Themselves part of the larger U.S. counterculture of the 1960s. Y'all get that? Counterculture. The practice gained popularity in the 1970s through the anti-nuclear movement and peaked in popularity in the early 1980s. Consensus spread abroad through the anti-globalization and climate movements and has become normalized in anti-authoritarian spheres in conjunction with affinity groups and ideas of participatory democracy and prefigurative politics. Despite similar practices being observed in different cultures throughout history, there are almost no literary uses of consensus decision-making or consensus process prior to 1960. So this is something that is even new in regards to people wanting to put their own emphasis and their hypothesis and their understanding ideas on presenting information on any particular topic. Right? So this is nothing that you can really hang your hat on. It's a good starting point for discussion. But without new evidence being introduced into an argument, see, once new evidence is being introduced into a new argument, new evidence, verifiable evidence, right? Then you don't need a consensus of scholarships to agree because the evidence is what it is. If there is no evidence, then you can't make a determination that there is for something or against something. You can't say Abraham didn't exist or Darius the Mede didn't exist because there's no direct evidence or evidence. But we know in regards to the prophecy of Jeremiah chapter 25 and Daniel in chapters 5 and 6 through 9 that we have evidence. We have evidence that we show throughout this presentation that, in fact, Daniel's prophecy was accurate. There exists a Darius the Mede, and we know without a doubt that these people existed because we have the extra biblical sources in archaeology. We have the steles from those particular time periods. We have other historians writing extra biblical sources outside of the Bible that are confirming what the prophecy of Daniel stated. This wasn't hard, Garfield. So understand, people, when Garfield started talking about what's a consensus of scholars, ask him where's the consensus decision making? Where's the process that it went through, and where's the report that came out of that on that particular topic when he starts talking about a consensus of scholars? He's not going to be able to show it to you most of the time. He's not. He's a believer. He's a believer. He follows the logical fallacy, a bandwagon fallacy. I'm jumping on the bandwagon with this. An appeal to numbers. It's a logical fallacy. No evidence to support his claims. Every time he brings out what's a consensus of scholarship says. Show you guys something else. Let's read this. Right? And this is from a site called Evidence Unseen. And they're going to deal with Daniel 5:31. Who is Darius to me? The claim critics argue that Daniel made a gross historical error here. On their view, Daniel believed that Darius was the one to conquer Babylon rather than the Persian king Cyrus. Of course, Darius I ruled the Medo-Persian Empire from 1522 to 486 BCE, so he could not be the man mentioned here in 539 BCE. Response: before we respond to this difficulty, we should note that Daniel's historical accuracy has been attested elsewhere throughout the book. Let's see authorship of Daniel. Furthermore, critics formerly held Daniel to be guilty of historical error, only to find him accurate. See Belshazzar 5:1. Right? So we're going to get to all of these. In this instance, Daniel gives more information about this ruler than any of the others, including his age. In verse 531, his father in chapters 9, Daniel 9 and 1, and his nationality. Daniel didn't believe that this was Darius the Persian from 522 BCE. He specifically calls him Darius the Mede, not Darius the Persian. He calls him Darius the Mede. In other words, he distinguishes between the two, Garfield. Daniel acknowledges that both the Medes and Persians conquered Babylon. Daniel 5:28. He also knew that Cyrus was the king of Persia. In Daniel 1, verse 21, and Daniel 6, verse 28. In other words, Daniel is far from ignorant regarding the historical details surrounding Darius. How then do we understand this historical difficulty that people like Garfield like to talk about? There are two plausible ways of answering this objection. Watch this. Option 1, Darius is a title that describes Jubaru. Now, he tried to touch on this, but we said this cut him right off the bat. We agree, Darius is a title. We see many Dariuses in Babylonian rulership with this variance of the name. And we have one historian says, look, that term Darius comes from a more ancient king before Artaxerxes or Cyrus the Great. This comes way before him, this Darius. This is from a much more ancient king than the father of Xerxes, than Darius, the father of Xerxes. It didn't start with him. That name came before a ruler years beyond him, before him. Right? It says this view was held by scholars like Robert Dick Wilson, Gleason Archer, William F. Albright, Friedrich Delitzsch, Joseph Whitcomb. Under this view, Daniel was given the title Darius, the royal one, to a contemporary ruler named Gubaru, who ruled Babylon immediately after the invasion. There are a number of reasons for this view. First, Cyrus gave temporary leadership authority to Gubaru immediately after the invasion. Stephen Miller writes, ancient records reveal that Gubaru did, in fact, govern Babylon during the period in question. For example, the Nabonidus Chronicle, I showed you guys that Cyrus appointed Gubaru or Gabrius as the governor of Babylon or satrap or governor of Babylon immediately after the city was conquered. A man named Gubaru existed during this time. Archer writes, Gubaru appears as the governor of Babylonia and of Ibanari, the western domains under Chaldean sovereignty. In tablets dated from the 4th to the 8th century of Cyrus, 8th year of Cyrus, 535 to 532 BCE, and even as late as the 5th year of Cambyses, 525 BCE. It seems altogether probable that during the transitional period of 539 to 538 BCE, he was appointed as viceroy or satrap over Babylonia for the purpose of bringing it into full submission and cooperation with the Medo-Persian Empire, of which it had to now become a part. Baldwin writes that Gubaru ruled almost as an independent monarch. The Nabonidus Chronicle, which is what I showed, states that Gubaru operated as a governor and appointed official in Babylon. Such a historical detail is not out of character with King Cyrus. History tells us that Cyrus was friendly with leaders whom he had conquered. Herodotus records that a Median general named Harpagus encouraged Cyrus to revolt against his grandfather Astyages, the king of Media. Yet, even after revolt, Cyrus still installed Astyages as a satrap over his kingdom. Here, critics of this view argue that Gubarun may have ruled in Babylon, but he was never called a king. However, critical commentator John Collins writes that Cambyses held the title of Babylon in the first year of Cyrus. So, such a suggestion is not without warrant. Second, it's possible that Darius is not a name but a title. Archer argues this viceroy was given the title of Dar Yois, which apparently meant the royal one, from Dara, which is attested in Avestan Persian as a term for king. Josephus records that Cyrus, the king of Persia, conquered Belshazzar. This is the Book of Antiquities. Yet Josephus also writes that Cyrus was the son of Astyages and had another name among the Greeks. This is also in the Book of Antiquities. After all, it was common, watch this, family, for ancient kings to receive new names. For instance, Eliakim became Jehoiakim, and Mattaniah became Zedekiah. And when he took the throne, 2 Kings 24:17, Archer adds, even the later Darius, son of Hestippes or Wistapa, bore the personal name of Spantadata. Even the casual reader of Daniel quickly discovers that Daniel and his three friends had dual names, Daniel 1 and 7. And he's done with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We know they had dual names, as well as David. As well as Daniel. Third, the language implies that Darius passively received the kingdom from someone of higher authority. Daniel says that Darius received the kingdom, and he was made king over the kingdom. This language is also passive voice, which is an odd way to describe Cyrus actively conquering Babylon. This may imply that Darius Gabaru received authority from King Cyrus. So, again, Garfield, this is an epic fail, bro. You got to get this thing right. You know? So we have to continue to deal with these things. Let's see where we are right here. Let's go back up here and read some of this about Belteshazzar. You can see Median and Persian officials of relief are Persepolis. Let's see. Try and pick up something here. Shalaki, forgive me real quick. Let's deal with this. The missing co-regencies in Thiel's chronology. Leslie McPhail, Cambridge, England. Because this is important. This is overkill on Garfield right now at this point. I got about 3 minutes, but I want to get to some of this. This is from Andrews University Seminary Studies, spring 1992. In 1944, Edwin R. Thiel published a breakthrough study with regard to the chronology of the kingdoms of Judah and Israel. In this, he provided a consistent and rational chronology, revealing the basic accuracy of the royal and reigns and synchronisms given in Kings and Chronicles. In fact, since the publication of an unexpected version of Thiel's findings in 1951 and the first edition of his mysterious numbers of the Hebrew Kings, there has been, in my view, no serious contender to rival his dates. Thiel's system has become the biblical scholar's first preference because it has stood the test of time under the scrutiny of a host of able scholars. Continue. I think that's the last one. Let me get back up here to Belshazzar, right? Belshazzar, grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, ruled Babylon We read about this in Daniel chapter 1-4. As the king entertained a feast, fingers of a hand appeared and wrote a message on the wall of the room. Daniel interpreted the message, which said that the king had been weighted in the balances and found wanting, signifying his fall. That night, Darius the Mede invaded the kingdom and ended Belshazzar's reign. The historical Belshazzar was the oldest son of Nabonidus and seems to have acted as regent. 556, 539 BCE. Belshazzar is called son of Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel chapter 5, 2 and 28. Mashok tells the story in Comfort de Amina, 661, 954 BCE. All right. The monk story of Belteshazzar illustrates the instability of power and the fickleness of fortune. Hold on, let me see. Let me go down here and then we ready to close this thing out. Let me see. Let me get to right here real quick. According to the accounts of the Bible and Xenophon, Belshazzar held a last great feast at which he saw a handwriting on the wall in the following words in Aramaic: Mene Mene Tekel of Harshan. The prophet Daniel interpreting the handwriting on the wall is God's judgment on the king, on the king, foretold the imminent destruction of the city. Belshazzar died after Babylon fell to the Persian general Gabrias without resistance on October 12, 539, and probably before the king of Persia, the Persian king Cyrus II entered the city 17 days later. And you can see the sources there. I want to end this right here. I still had a whole lot more I can get into. All right. Just wanted to show you guys this. This is even Jeremiah, Daniel, and Ezekiel's timeline. So I wanted to show the family, just waiting for it to come up. Here it talks about the Judean kings. I just wanted to get that right there on the screen. I just wanted you to see what Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel are all contemporaries. They're prophesying throughout the various parts of the country of the Babylonian Empire. Because if you say Jeremiah lied, then you have to say Isaiah lied, then you have to say Ezekiel lied as well. But you can't do it. It doesn't exist, Garfield. I'm going to put it out there. Anytime you want to go back through this information and challenge me straight up on it, let's do it. But I doubt if I see you. He's going to say the scholarship is outdated, but he has no new information to refute the old evidence. So it still stands. That's how it works, Garfield. That's how it works. So again, man, glad y'all tuned in, man. I just wanted to be on for a couple of hours, man, just to bring this information out, man. Let y'all know, man, this Garfield guy, the scholarship is not to be trusted. If this is what you're going to be giving us, at least say that this is your hypothesis. This is what you think, and then step away. I know why you wouldn't want to come out and take that debate with me on T.L. Thompson work and Van Satters. about the existence of Abraham, because you know there's no evidence in support of or against. And so when you come out and say he's only an eponymous ancestor and he never existed, you're lying. You don't know that. And hopefully more. So I'm going to come out maybe in the next couple of days, and we're going to deal with the Song of Deborah, and I'm going to show you Garfield. I'm going to show you Garfield, all 12 tribes in the Song of Deborah. This is stuff we've done years ago. Years ago. I'm going to show you all 12 tribes mentioned in the Song of Deborah, and why you say when certain tribes do not exist, they're not mentioned because they didn't exist. Therefore, the 12 tribes chart is inaccurate. Come on, bro. You got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. So be looking for that notification coming up. I'm going to probably put it out today when I'm going to be doing that, to show all 12 tribes in the Song of Deborah, in the book of Judges. Garfield says because she doesn't mention them, then it has to be that they didn't exist. The tribe of Gad didn't exist. Or that, even more importantly, I heard him say this, that the tribe of Gad was just one of the Confederates that were not even Israelites. Or some foolishness like that. But I'm going to show you the error of your ways. All praise to the Most High. Man, shout out to Israelite Intelligentsia, man. Shout out to Israel. Shout out to the Yahweh War Machine. Shout out to KOT. I see you doing your thing. Shout out to Gideon for gracing the panel. Shout out to Rashard, Rashard for gracing the panel. Those of you who are listening to support. Those of you all came through in the chat. Appreciate you, fam. Jeremiah Julie, appreciate you. Shout out to the Lions Den. Go and subscribe to the Lions Den. Shout out to you, Sosa. Thanks on the ground. One of the great researchers, man, we got in the community, man. Hope we're going to get a chance to share some of this information on the Exodus. Shout out to you, brother Sosa. Shout out to you, Kofi. Always a pleasure. Thanks on the ground, family. Y'all a War Machine live and well. Don't get it twisted. We will get dealt with. We will get dealt with. Peace and blessings, family.